In the small town of Shady Hollow, in the American state of Texas, lived a 35-year-old man named Michael. He was a freelance lawn mower, meaning he worked alone without the need for an employer. Michael was a tall and slim man with brown hair and green eyes. He was known for being a dedicated worker and a man of few words. Michael worked every day, from morning until night, mowing lawns for houses, businesses, and even public parks. He was an excellent lawnmower, and his work was always impeccable. The townspeople often saw him roaming the streets with his noisy and efficient lawnmower. Michael didn't interact much with customers. He just did his job and moved on to the next location. Some people began to comment on Michael's reserved nature, speculating about what he did during the long hours between jobs. The weather in Shady Hollow was hot and dry for most of the year, keeping Michael busy as the grass grew rapidly under the scorching Texas sun. However, something about Michael's presence began to unsettle the residents. Besides his silent aura, strange rumors surfaced about inexplicable events on the properties he mowed. Some claimed to have heard eerie whispers while Michael worked, while others said they glimpsed shadows moving around him. The stories grew darker as a sense of fear and apprehension hung over Shady Hollow. Some began to avoid his services, even if it meant letting their lawns grow wildly. On a particularly dark night, a family decided to hire Michael to mow their backyard. They had heard the rumors but dismissed them as the community's overactive imagination. In this family, there was a young woman named Melanie. Melanie was a 25-year-old of unique beauty. Her long black hair stood out against the paleness of her skin, and her intensely blue eyes seemed to hold deep secrets, like wells of mystery framed by long, dark lashes. Of average height, Melanie possessed a natural elegance in her movements. Her quiet yet intriguing presence captured the attention of anyone who crossed her path. She dressed in a peculiar style, combining vintage pieces with contemporary touches, creating a look that reflected her unique personality. On the night they decided to hire a Mikhail to take care of the lawn, Melanie was curious to witness the man who stirred so much commotion in the town. Melanie couldn't ignore the feeling that something unusual was about to happen. The next morning, Michael arrived at the property and talked to Melanie's father about the job. The usually reserved lawnmower explained the procedures in detail. His tone, though calm, carried a seriousness that didn't go unnoticed. Melanie, observing him closely, tried to decipher the thoughts behind Michael's unwavering expression. At the end of the conversation, when Michael left to start the job, Melanie couldn't shake the feeling that the normality of that morning concealed deep secrets waiting to be revealed. At noon, Michael paused for a brief moment and nodded cordially to Melanie. He seemed to notice the curiosity in her eyes, but his expression remained unshakable. Although intrigued, Melanie couldn't gather the courage to question the mysterious man. The afternoon progressed, and the lawn sculpted by Michael began to reveal strange and intricate shapes. Sinister designs emerged, forming patterns reminiscent of ancient symbols. The feeling that something ancestral was awakening grew within Melanie, and she realized that hiring Michael to mow the lawn was unleashing forces beyond her understanding. The atmosphere around became charged with a dark energy, and Melanie felt a shiver down her spine. She began to realize that hiring Michael was connected to something much more than a simple lawn mowing service. The lawnmower had unleashed dark forces threatening to come to the surface, bringing with them a storm of macabre events that would forever change the quiet life of the small town of Shady Hollow. Michael finished his job and left. As it was already night, Melanie's father didn't notice the symbols on his lawn. The next day, the small town of Shady Hollow woke up under a cloudy sky, heralding the approaching storm. As the hours passed, strange events began to occur. Birds circled above Melanie's house, emitting ominous songs. Her brother reported having disturbing dreams and dark visions. A restlessness hung in the air, as if nature itself were reacting to the symbols inscribed on the lawn. Melanie's father reassured her, dismissing her fears as baseless. He was incredulous and thought it was just an approaching storm. Melanie's brother went to school, and on the way, his bus suffered a terrible accident. Authorities investigated the accident, and it became evident that it was not a simple incident. The bus had collided inexplicably, as if something beyond human control were involved. News quickly spread through the small town of Shady Hollow, leaving the family stunned and devastated. Melanie's father, who previously downplayed supernatural events, now began to worry about Melanie's earlier conversation. The accident was so terrible that her brother needed to undergo delicate surgery hanging between life and death. Her mother was distraught in the hospital, facing the torment of seeing her son fighting for survival. The atmosphere in the medical center was laden with anguish and apprehension. Due to the severity of the situation, the family could not stay together in the hospital. Melanie, now at home, felt the weight of silence and loneliness. The emptiness in her house reflected the emptiness in her heart as she awaited news about her brother's condition. The nights were long and lonely for Melanie. She felt the dark presence around her, as if the house itself were reacting to the forces unleashed by the macabre symbols on the lawn. Every creak, every shadow, fueled the restlessness growing within her. Past midnight, Melanie decided to make a snack. She walked to the kitchen and began to prepare a sandwich. Sitting down to eat at the counter, and at that moment, after the first bite, Melanie began to feel severe stomach pains. Tremendous nausea enveloped her, and unexpectedly she vomited. The discomfort was so intense that Melanie began to vomit blood. Horror seized her as the pain persisted. Every spasm of her body was an indescribable agony, and the blood continued to gush. Melanie, weak and dazed, desperately reached for the phone to call an ambulance, falling in the middle of the living room. Even so, she began to crawl to reach her cell phone. With a trembling voice, she tried to explain the situation to the emergency operator, but her words were cut by the pain. The ambulance finally arrived, but what the paramedics witnessed left them stunned. Melanie lay on the floor, pale as death, while shadowy entities seemed to hover over her. The environment was impregnated with a malevolent energy, and the rescue team could barely comprehend the nature of what was happening. As Melanie was taken to the ambulance, the paramedics tried to stabilize her, but something beyond medical understanding seemed to determine her fate. The journey to the hospital was marked by inexplicable events, with unsettling shadows manifesting inside the ambulance, as if darkness insisted on accompanying her. Melanie was admitted to the same hospital as her brother. The parents, stunned and desperate, found themselves plunged into a nightmare unfolding before their eyes. The early morning was a time of great struggle and exhaustion among the doctors to save Melanie's life. Her brother was in the ICU, not knowing if he would survive or not. The doctors, still intrigued by the mysterious nature of the siblings' conditions, maintained constant vigilance. They adjusted treatment protocols as the situation evolved, but uncertainty hung over what really triggered the situation. 8 days passed until Melanie and her brother began to show slight improvement. While waiting in the hospital, Melanie's father began to remember some conversations he had with Melanie and her son. It was when he began to suspect that all this evil had settled after Michael visited their garden. In a desperate move, he tried to contact Michael on his cell phone, but the voicemail message said that that number did not exist. Melanie's father decided to go to the police station, where he made a composite sketch of Michael. The sheriff said he was not the first to question or report, but mysteriously this young man had disappeared. The only reports he had were that he belonged to an evil cult. As the days went by and Melanie and her brother recovered, the small town of Shady Hollow underwent a wave of changes. Melanie's father, determined to protect his family and community, led a movement to strengthen local security. Authorities, aware of the inexplicable events, intensified investigations into Michael. The mystery surrounding Michael remained unsolved, but the community learned to live with the unknown. Quiet days returned to Shady Hollow, and the memory of the sinister lawnmower became a distant part of the past.